when talking to stuntmen, there are certain names that crop up time and time again and are seen as legends in the stunt world. And I think it's safe to say I'm talking to one of those now, none other than Rocky Taylor. Thank you for joining me.
That's very, very kind of you to make me a legend in my own lifetime. I'm still alive.
Very much so, and still busy working. I mean, you've not long released your book as well.
No, you're right. I've done a book called Jump, Rocky Jump, which is out. It's doing very well. Everybody that reads it says it's quite a good read, so I'm very happy with that. Yes, very proud of it as it happens. And I was very proud of it because my mother, who passed away in April, I wanted to get the book out before she passed away. And 2 weeks before she passed away, I got the book out and I took it up to her and she looked at it and she said, Jump, Rocky, Jump, which is the name of the book. And that was one of my most proudest, happiest moments of my life, to see my mother know that I'd done a book about my life.
And what a fantastic read it is as well. If viewers haven't read it, go out and buy it. It's fantastic.
That's very kind of you. What's good about it is that, Alex, is that it's not a boring book. It's all antidotes, a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here. And, you know, you can pick it up whenever you want.
And one of those, I suppose, a footnote in your career is Doctor Who, which goes right back to the 60s.
Doctor Who is where I sort of started from. You're absolutely right. I did a couple of Doctor Who's, and Derek Ware was the stunt coordinator. And, you know, he was one of the founders of stunt work years and years ago. Good stunt coordinator, not so much a stunt man. I'm not bringing him down, but he got into stunt coordinating before he became a stunt man, really. He was one of those, very lucky man. But a very nice man. I did enjoy working for him. And
on Doctor Who, you also worked with David Anderson and Terry.
David Anderson, one of the greatest sword masters of all time. I think it was silver or gold or something he won in the Olympics. One of the great swordmen of our career. Very lovely man too.
And you also worked with Terry Walsh on the show.
Terry Walsh, yes, very sad. He left us. He'd been doing stunt work for a few years. And he was, you know, a very nice man, good stunt man. And he got an opportunity to double for Michael Caine. And I believe he was on a couple of pictures he did for Michael Caine. And then unfortunately he had a stroke or a heart attack, I can't remember. And he passed away. It was just actually his peak of his career was just coming through.
I suppose if you're going to do Doctor Who, you want to work with the Daleks. Do you remember much about working with them?
Well, I'll be quite honest with you. Daleks weren't sort of in my vocabulary then. It's just what they were just machines going around making noises. I didn't realise until later on in my life that Daleks were going to be that wonderful and everybody was going to say Dalek, you know. So, you know, I understand now, you know, that they're a great machine and people love them, but it wasn't in my little bit.
At the time, this would just have been a couple of days' worth of work amongst many other television series.
Oh, yeah, I was very fortunate in my career. I went down on the Avengers playing a part as a thug, and Ray Austin, the stunt coordinator, asked me to do a jump over a balcony and land on a table and do a little fight scene. And I said, yeah, I can do that. And he went, great. And I did it. And he went, go and get changed. Went to the wardrobe, got suits, and I was now doubling for Steed on the Avengers for 5 or 6 years, which is quite incredible. And from that moment on, I was at Elstree Studios, and the Saint was there, Randall Lockhart, Department S, Champions. I mean, all those series. And I was fortunate enough that if I wasn't working on the Avengers, Les Crawford, who was the stunt coordinator on the other ones, and I used to go and do days here and that. It was like my apprentice of my stunt career was at Elstree Studios.
So was that the golden time for sort of action television then?
Of course it was, yes, of course it was. Absolutely right. The golden time, especially for me. You know, film work wasn't really my vocabulary then, though there were films happening. You know, I did a couple of days on the Bond many years ago and this and that. But I was also tied to the television. And television was the biggest part of my career. I'm very proud of it too. Doubling for Mike Pratt, Steed on the Avengers, Pat Macnee. I did Danger Man. What's his name? The other one on the Department S. Anyway, you know what I mean? It was just a great time for me.
Professionals, champions.
The champions, yeah. Yeah, all those.
So how did you then make that move from television to film?
Well, what happened was I was working on the Avengers, as I said, and a guy called Joe Wadham, who used to own a company called 999 Cars, he got a film called Monte Carlo or Bust, and it meant taking out 10 or 12 stuntmen away for 6 months to Sweden, driving cars in snow and ice and all that. And he said, Rocky, you know, you're a good driver. Would you like to come away with me? And I said, yeah. He said, well, what we're going to do, we're going to send all the drivers down to Aldershot to learn how to drive on a skid pan. You know, so we went down there for 2 or 3 weeks, learning to drive the cars on skid pans, which is water, and you know, you'd learn how to skid and things, put the brakes on, put the handbrake on, because we were going to go to ice, and that's why we did it. And it was great. I really enjoyed it, and I had 6 months travelling around Europe on Monte Carlo Bust, and I was doubling for Peter Cook, driving the Dawlish car, and I crashed through an ice brick, and I'm now on a Cresta run going down a mountain, 4 or 5 miles down the mountain on a Cresta run. And Ken Anakin, the director, said it was the best part of the movie he'd ever shot. We had 3 cameras, 5 cameras on the mountain, and 2 helicopters chasing me down. It was just a great sequence, and I was very proud of it.
And something like that, how long do you have to rehearse it and work out mechanics before?
Well, what happened? They showed me the mountain and said, we're going to put a Cresta run there. And I looked at it and I said, well, we're going right the way around it? He went, yeah. And it worked out at 4.5 miles or something it was. I said, well, great. So we practiced on a little bit of, we built a dummy bit at the bottom so I could practice just going up sideways to get the feel of the car. And, well, to be honest with you couldn't really practice coming down a mountain. So I just had to go and do it blind, and which I did. My only problem with me was it wasn't really me that I was worried about, because I was in a car. So I could hit the sides of the mountain and bounce backwards and forwards off. So we put 3 inches spikes in the tyres to keep a grip. But my big problem was the guys in front on a toboggan. Because what we did, we crashed through a wall, and there was supposed to be a toboggan in front of me. And we're chasing the toboggan down the mountain. And I was just worried, if one of them guys fell out, would I have time to brake? So it wasn't my fault, my bit, it was their bit that I was worried about. That kept me awake all night thinking about them. But Ken Anakin, the next day, when he saw the shot, came up to me and said, Rocky, it was the greatest shot he's seen. Go home and have a bottle of champagne with your lads and come back the next day. So that's what we did.
And would you often work with the same group of people? You know, would that be your sort of stunt unit?
Well, what happens in the film game, you get groups. You get a group of men there and a group of men here and a group of men there. You're either with that group or you're not with that group. And I was very fortunate because being a young, active type of man, I did judo when I was very young. I got black belt. I could learn how to fall properly and throw myself about. And all the other stuntmen were sort of older stuntmen that didn't do judo. All they could do was bits and pieces. Where I was fortunate enough, I could throw myself around. And that's where I got my name. That, you know, I'm very agile and I got a lot of work. That's how it worked for me. I was very fortunate. My father was a stuntman. So I sort of got my trade basically from him. But I learned it all through myself.
So with stunts being in the family, was it always a given that that's what you would do?
No. Because when I left school, I actually went into the technical side. I was on the camera side, you know, clapper, loader and all that. running around delivering stuff around the West End, letters and films. And it just happened that one day I was sitting in the office and the phone went, and I answered the phone, and it was Peter Diamond, who wanted to speak to my father. He said, "Is that Rocky?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, Rocky." He said, "I want you to speak to you, actually." I said, "Yeah." He said, "We're doing a film called The Young Ones down at Elstree, and Cliff Richard needs to learn how to do judo. And I heard that you're a judo man." I said, "Yeah, well, I've got a black belt." He said, "Yeah. Would you like to come down to Elstree and teach Cliff Richard judo?" I went, "Well, I mean, don't forget, Cliff Richard was one of the biggest names in the, he's like the Beatles, wasn't he, So I went, all right, I got my Lambretta, went down to Elstree, met Cliff, met the director. We spoke about the sequence, and we got some mats in, and I taught him how to do some judo throws. And then he said, "You're working so well with Cliff. Do you want to play the part as the thug that has the fight?" And I went, "Well, yeah, why not?" So I left the old technical side and became a stuntman. The rest is where I am now, history.
So there was never any ideas to go back
No,
to it then?
I didn't even know, 4 or 5 years into my career as a stuntman, I didn't even know what the word stuntman was, to be honest. So it wasn't like that's what I wanted to do. All of a sudden, I was doing things. When I was doing things to Patrick Macnee on the Avengers, it's because he couldn't do it. That's all. I could do them, he could. And then I realised it became a stuntman. And that's how my industry and whatever I've become has happened.
And ambition of particularly television these days, things like Game of Thrones seems to be bigger, more visual. Have you found that the stunts that you're asked to do on television have been more demanding?
Your question is true, but what you've got to realise now, there's a lot of things called visual effects, special effects, and CGI. Where before, years ago, we were worried about wires breaking, ropes being seen when you're doing stuff. Now, you can have a rope as thick as your head, and they can take it out. So the industry become a lot safer. They actually want to see more stuff, more demanding stuff, but with what CGI can do now, you can create it. Unfortunately, that's sort of gone beyond me a bit, as my career is diminishing at 74, 75, that bit's gone on a bit. It's gone on further, you know what I mean? It's I've got to learn that now.
But yeah, and you also had a very long association with James Bond, which is famously a franchise that if you can do it, you physically do the stunt somehow. Has that changed as the films have progressed?
James Bond, I've done about 10 James Bonds, I think. I've doubled for Sean a couple of times and Pierce. Mainly Roger. I mean, but I didn't do a lot of doubling for them lads on them pictures. I was mainly a stuntman doing other stuff on them pictures, I didn't actually double a lot for the main artist on them pictures. Like the big car turnover things and all that. That was done by Remy Julian and stuff like that years ago. Nowadays we can do it, but then days they were using special effects, very good drivers and stuff like that, But I have done 10 Bonds.
And you doubled for 2 in 1 year.
I've doubled for 2 Bonds in 1 year.
Wow.
Sean Connery and Roger Moore. Never Say Never and Octopussy. So that's a bit of a feat. And I've got a Guinness record for it.
Wow, that is certainly a one-off. And who was more up for doing their own stunts?
I think if I was to answer your question truly, it would be Pierce Brosnan. Sean didn't really want to do too much. Bit of sword fencing, throw a punch. Roger really only wanted to throw a punch, but Sean, Pierce Brosnan, he wouldn't mind doing a bit more stuff. He was quite. I really like Pierce Brosnan out of them all.
And you said earlier you doubled for Patrick Macnee, who was always seen as this perfect English gentleman. But when it came to it, was he quite good at working with you on stunts or smaller bits?
No, the answer to that question has always been asked, and I'm going to give it to you bluntly. He was great for me because he couldn't put one foot in front of another. He couldn't throw a left or a right punch, so I did it. He couldn't walk left or right, I did it. It was one of the greatest things because he couldn't do anything. He was absolutely useless, but a lovely man. So whenever there was any action, I was there, which gave me a lot of work, so I was very pleased.
Well, as we said, you're a world record-holding stuntman, and your career takes you straight back to the 60s. Is there any particular stunt or setup that you're most proud of?
Well, I mean, I had a very bad accident on Death Wish 3, which it made me famous, if you like. The word, I hate that word, famous. It's made people understand who I am, but it was a mistake that shouldn't have happened. It wasn't caused by my mistake, but the answer to the question, I suppose that one was very, Death Wish 3 was a big, big thing in my life. Changed my whole life. It made me what I am, who I am, and nearly killed me. So I presume Death Wish 3 was, if it sticks in my brain.
And also you had a sort of martial arts background. Do you particularly have a specialism of what sort of stunts you'll do, or is it a case you do anything really?
No, martial arts. I really wasn't a martial arts artist. I became a black belt judo, which is a bit different from martial arts. Martial arts came at the end of my black belt days. I can do martial arts for films, i.e. I can still do karate and bits and pieces for film work, but I wouldn't say I'm a martial artist. But black belt judo, any chance you like, you can have me on the mat. Any randori, I'll have it.
And I don't want to take up too much of your time, so one final question, if I may. Am I right in thinking you were one of the original Honey Monsters?
Oh, you've hit me now, haven't you? Tell him about the honey, mummy. Yeah, I was very fortunate. A friend of mine called Kid Dabson was a golf pro, and his girlfriend worked for an agency who employed people to go around the country doing these funny things. And he was out of work. I was sort of out of work a bit. And she phoned him and said, we've got this honey monster. They go around the country dressed as a honey monster, but we need 2 people. So he said, Rocky, do you want to come with me? So I said, yeah, all right. So we did it for a year. And everywhere we went was fantastic. Everywhere I went, I drove into a hotel, put the honey monster's head in the back seat, and we got the best hotel in the plane. We got first class travel in the restaurant. Everybody wanted my autograph as the honey monster. It was a great year.
Oh, fantastic. Well, on that fantastic note, I'd just like to say thank you very much, Rocky, for your time. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you about some of your work.